listening to the Baumbastic Podcast with Andrew Ellis on Inside Arkansas.
And what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Baumbastic Podcast presented by Inside Arkansas and hosted by Andrew Ellis. I'm coming to you on this brilliant Sunday afternoon, March 2nd, as the Arkansas Razorbacks have improved to 10-1. They have finished off a series sweep over the Charlotte 49ers. It was chaotic. They did it in walk-off fashion. Like most of this series this weekend, it was back and forth. It was tight. It was coming down to the final pitch, it felt like. It was a lot of tough decisions to make with the pitching staff, with the lineup. Arkansas had a lot of different characters that needed to come through in this game. Maybe a little too close for comfort. I know some fans were not thrilled with the lack of separation in this series overall, and definitely not in this deciding game 3. Both teams are kind of running on fumes with their pitching staffs at some point. Arkansas bringing back a couple guys for the second time this weekend. I know Charlotte did the same. Arkansas ends up going to Will McIntyre, who gets the biggest, most important outs in this game. He gets the win on the mound, gives Arkansas a chance to walk it off in the bottom of the 9th. But let's start at the beginning real quick before we take a look at the box score. And before I get into your chats and your comments and your questions, we're here for a little bit of a series recap. We will go as long as you guys want to. We're going to break it all down, especially with today's game. But, of course, any questions about the Arkansas Razorback baseball team, whether it's from this weekend, moving forward, just how you feel, vibe standpoint, that's what we're here to do on this Sunday afternoon. We're going to start doing these more regularly. We might do some watch parties on Sundays, maybe watch the series finale together. But at the very least, we're going to be doing some type of live chat, live stream to wrap up the weekend. But let's start at the beginning of this game real quick. So Arkansas goes to Landon Beidelshees on the bump, who gets the start in this one after making his one relief appearance of the year. Then Gage Wood's injury thrusts him right back into that weekend rotation, a spot that we felt like he might have a chance to be in, a spot he might be in for the rest of the season. We'll see. But I thought he gave Arkansas maybe their best start of the season so far. He gets into the 7th inning, gets one out, goes 6 1/3, gives up just a 1 run, which came on a solo home run. I believe he had 7 strikeouts, only the 1 walk, which I think came to the final hitter he faced. He was in line for the win when he left the game, gave Arkansas a chance to get into this game, get settled. We felt like Arkansas was going to need some depth from their starting rotation after the way that Gabe Gackel's start went on Friday. You began start counting outs a little bit, kind of wondering how is Arkansas going to piece this weekend together with who they have in the bullpen. And look, Arkansas is a really loaded, deep pitching staff. They have more than enough guys to do it. But when you're missing one of your top guys in Gage Wood, you don't get a good outing out of your ace, Gabe Gackel, on Friday night. He only gives you 3 innings. There was a lot of pressure on Zach Root and Landon Beidelshees to come through in their starts. Zach Root ended up getting into the 6th inning in his start, and Landon Beidelshees ends up getting into the 7th. I believe that is the longest start for a Razorback, or longest outing of any kind for an Arkansas pitcher this season. I thought he was really good and kind of, let us know, hey, don't forget about me real quick. All these other arms are good. Gage Wood's a dude. He might rejoin the starting rotation, but whether I'm on the mound in the end of the games or the start of the games, Landon Beidelshees is going to be a problem. He reminded us of that today. Parker Coyle comes through and gives Arkansas some big outs. I believe he gave Arkansas 5 outs in this one, through an immaculate 8th inning. For those that don't know, that is 9 pitches, 9 strikes, 3 strikeouts. You don't see that every day. In fact, you rarely see that at all. One could certainly argue Arkansas probably should have held with Parker Coyle there and let him pitch the 9th. We'll get into that decision a little bit because I know you guys have your comments on it. I actually was kind of okay with it. I felt like Parker could maybe give you 1-2 innings in this game. Reminder, he threw 25 pitches and gave Arkansas 2 key innings on Friday night. So, if they had left him in and he gave up a 2-run home run, it would have looked like a stupid decision to ride him that long. Ultimately, I felt like if you get to this game with Fouch, with a lead in the 9th inning, I expected Fouch to be the guy. Fouch clearly did not look great. It was, in hindsight, of course, shouldn't have gone to him. But coming into today, hell, on yesterday's show, I said if Arkansas can get to the 9th inning, give themselves a lead, I think you would probably see Christian Fouch come back for another inning. He threw 13 pitches on Friday, but again, Parker Coyle threw 25 pitches on Friday. He came back and gave you 5 outs. You felt like your junior, your top 200 draft pick, your closer, a guy who has 2 saves for you on the year, should probably be able to come through in that situation. He did not. Arkansas ends up needing to go to a veteran in Will McIntyre, who, like I said, came into a situation, I believe it was 1st and 3rd with nobody out. the tying run on third base, the go-ahead run on first. McIntyre ends up getting a quick fielder's choice to second base, ends up getting a punch out. I think it was a punch out and then a fly out or something like that. But he gets the job done, gets Arkansas out of it, gives them a chance to walk it off in the ninth. At the plate, by the way, you see the 4 runs. I'm sure there's some people who weren't thrilled with Arkansas's offensive performance. I thought they swung the bats pretty well. Let's be honest. Let's give some credit to Charlotte, because I do think they're not a bad team by any means. I don't think that's a team like, clearly Arkansas is going to face better, more talented teams top to bottom than Charlotte. But I think that's a pretty solid mid-major there. I was pretty impressed overall, well-rounded. They don't make a ton of mistakes in the field. At-bats, I felt like they strung together some decent at-bats. They have a couple guys in the middle of that order that really put some fear into you a little bit. They've got a few good right-handed bats, and I think their pitchers, they have about 5 or 6 pitchers that they really trust. And once you get past that 5 or 6, they don't really feel great. And we kind of saw that play out. But those top 4, 5, 6 arms that they have are pretty solid. Their pitching numbers were good coming into the weekend. So offensively, Arkansas scores 11 runs on Friday. They score 8 runs yesterday. They wind up with 4 runs in this game, but on 13 hits, felt like there were actually some opportunities that Arkansas could have punched in a few more runs, had a few outs on the base paths. Things, left a few runners out on bases here and there, but I thought Arkansas swung the bats pretty well. Like I said, 13 hits in this game. Let's go ahead and pull up that box score here. So Justin Thomas gets the start in center field again. He was out of the lineup yesterday, got the day off, comes back in the leadoff spot. It was Charles Davalon who did not start this game, though Davalon came through later in the game as a replacement and singles through the left side for a base hit, gets him on the board there. Carson Bowles gets the start in left field. He had a double down the line in the 6th inning for Arkansas, a 2-out double. Good to see from him. Cam Kojal did not start in this game. He comes off the bench and has an infield single as well. Bahiva Aloy goes 1 for 5. I guess his worst game of the year, or his worst game of the weekend, though he reached base in all 3. Logan Maxwell, of course, had the game-winning go-ahead walk-off single in the 9th inning to what was a 2-man outfield by that point, because he had the bases loaded and 1 out. So Charlotte went with all these defenders. They had 7 guys there in the infield. Logan Maxwell just does his job, gets the ball in the outfield. That was his 3rd hit of the day. He swung the bat well this weekend. He will definitely be one of my winners for the weekend. Brent Iredale goes 1 for 4. Kahio Aloy started his day 2 for 2, picked up right where he left off, drove in Arkansas's first run. I guess that came early in maybe the 3rd inning, somewhere around there. 2 opposite field singles, really good to see out of him. Rocco Pepe did not have a hit in this game, but he did drive in Arkansas's 2nd run of the game with a sac fly. He and Ryder Helfrich were the 2 starters who did not have a hit, but both guys I thought had productive ABs. Ryder Helfrich drew a walk and came around to score an important insurance run there in the 8th inning, and then winds up drawing a walk in the 9th inning as well, which really helped Arkansas put the game away. Gabe Frazier gets a start at second base, reached with a bunt single. Nothing crazy out of Gabe Frazier. He ended up getting a defensive replacement for Souza, who, by the way, Nolan Souza, I can't believe it took me this long to get to Nolan Souza, comes in the game as a defensive replacement, ends up getting an at-bat. I was actually very annoyed that in the bottom of the 8th, Arkansas got thrown out on the base paths, which didn't allow Nolan Souza to get an at-bat, and Arkansas was up 3-1 at this point. So in my head, I'm like, damn, Souza doesn't get his chance to come through. Did not anticipate Christian Fauch shitting the bed a little bit, giving Arkansas a chance to hit in the bottom of the 9th inning with a 3-3 game. So Nolan Souza comes up, works the count, immediately gets down 1-2, swings through a breaking ball, and you're like, oh man, you can just kind of feel it coming again. Lays off a changeup away, lays off another breaking ball down. You start to feel pretty good. I think he fouled one off in there somewhere, and then just goes with the pitch where he's hit it, where he hits a pitch where it's pitched, goes up the middle with it. Great 2-strike approach. Exactly what we've been waiting to see from Nolan Souza. He was fired up as soon as he got that base hit. You could tell he really needed that. So he leads off that bottom of the 9th with a base hit, a single, ends up coming around to score the go-ahead, the game-winning run that gave Arkansas the win. That should definitely get him going, man. That should make you feel good. But really, you just going down the lineup, I felt like Arkansas is doing a really good job at this point of really making pitchers work, fighting, giving good ABs 1-9. There's some connective tissue with this lineup starting to form where, you see a 7, 8, 9 pitch battle, and then you look up and you're like, oh crap, Bahiva Aloy's up next. And then you have another battle there, and then it's like, oh, Logan Maxwell, he's swinging it pretty well. Oh, another battle there, and then it's Brent Iredale. Like, Arkansas starting to wear on pitchers a little bit. I thought the Charlotte starter, Andrew Cripps, Clips, something like that. He threw the ball really well. Like he was a JUCO transfer. I didn't know much about him, but he was up to 93 with the fastball. Has a really good changeup, which is why Arkansas loaded up righties against him, because the lefties really just don't hit him much. I was pretty encouraged for the most part by what I saw from Arkansas's bats. Not a perfect, day at the yard, not a perfect weekend at the yard, but honestly, it was a sweep, and it was a sweep where we're just not going to complain about. That's not what we're going to do here on this program. But I feel like Arkansas had to really kind of work for that sweep. It's not like they just showed up and we're just a better team and kind of rake their way to wins, which would be cool. You'd like to see that. And maybe Arkansas can do that next week against a Portland team that also seems pretty salty. But I feel like this also just makes Arkansas a better team, having to have them dig deep a little bit and see what they can do. I thought that was really encouraging stuff. And like I said, you have all these hitters. I mean, what I just list off, 12, 13 position players that played in this game. Everyone kind of had to play a role. Same with the pitching staff. It's cool to see these guys having to band together and different guys having to step up in that pitching staff. Really encouraging stuff. That's going to just make Arkansas better down the line. But let's get into the chat. Let's see what you guys had to say about this. Bo starts off our chat. He says, maybe we should forget about the whole trying to steal bases thing. So I tweeted about this earlier coming into today. And I want you guys to remember when all this preseason talk was happening, and it was coming from Dave Van Horn, it was coming from other reporters, it was coming from just this kind of narrative that was budding in the fan base, that the Razorbacks were going to have this completely different brand of baseball. They were going to play a different way. They were going to be stealing bases and hit and run and small ball and left and right, which, by the way, you've seen some small ball here and there. That's something they worked on, something that Arkansas has in their back pocket. When you're in a 3-3 game in the ninth inning and you just score a run, that's a good time to use it. But I always push back against the narrative that like that was going to be what defined this offense, that it was going to be what it was built around, was wheeling and dealing and stealing bases and all that. And Arkansas ran, pretty freely in the fall, stole a ton of bases. But when they played that exhibition series against Oklahoma State, you faced a pretty good catcher. All of a sudden, stealing doesn't seem like a very good idea. So Arkansas entered today dead last in the SEC with 5 stolen bases on the year. And they had also been thrown out, 7 stolen bases on the year. And they had been caught stealing 4 times, which was one of the highest rates in the league. They were getting caught stealing almost as much as anyone in the league. And they were successfully stealing at a lower rate than literally the entire league. So it clearly was not, I think they were 0 for 3 today, 0 for 2 maybe. Clearly has just not been a point of strength for this Razorback team. Getting Nolan Souza going will help that, because he's probably, not probably, he's the fastest player on the team, your best base stealer. He's who led Arkansas in stolen bases in the fall and in the spring. So getting him going will help give Arkansas some of that threat. But this team is not a 1 through 9. Let's see if we can steal a bunch of bags. I felt like Arkansas, if they had not stolen bases today, would have probably scored an extra run or two, honestly, because I felt like it kind of ran them out of some innings. So I agree with this assessment, Bo. Definitely need to stop the whole trying to steal bases thing. Hog on it has a predictable reaction to the action today. He says Fouch is not a reliable pitcher right now. May have the most upside, but to bench Coyle after that inning is just stupid. Okay, so I'm going to touch on 2 things about this. One, I don't think viewing it as them benching Coyle is the way to view it. I don't think that's an accurate representation of what happened. And I spoke about this at the top, and I think you had made this comment before, but Coyle had thrown 25 pitches on Friday, and then what he ended up throwing pitch count-wise today, ends up throwing 17 pitches. So nothing like crazy. That's 42 pitches in high-leverage situations. He had given you, I guess, 6 outs on Friday, 5 outs today, 11 outs. Coyle had done his job. That is exactly what they brought Coyle in to do, was to be a bridge. And of course, with the way he threw in the 8th inning, it's 100% natural. And frankly, I think we were all kind of wondering, like, hey, maybe they'll try and stretch him out for another inning. But at the end of the day, you had a 2-run lead, and Christian Fouch has been Arkansas's closer. Now, we can argue, should he be the closer? Is he really that reliable? I don't know. But we're talking about a guy that had an ERA under 1 last year, a guy that's unanimously viewed as a top 250 draft prospect. I don't think it's like that crazy of a notion to say 3-1 game, go in there and give us 3 outs. Now, clearly he didn't do that. And so anytime you put a pitcher in and he sucks, it's easy to turn back and say, well, you shouldn't have done that. Can we agree that the premise at least made sense? And that Coyle, of course, maybe you could have gotten 3 more outs out of him, but, I don't think early in the season in a series like this, I don't really think Arkansas should set that precedent of asking Parker Coyle to just bail them out of a bunch of situations. And I think Parker Coyle's awesome. He's given Arkansas 8 innings of scoreless ball to start his junior year. He's a dude, no doubt about it. And hell, maybe he will be getting some closing opportunities now, but I don't want to, in hindsight, try and make that decision like it was this crazy concept that like we can't get our heads around. And ultimately with Fouch, he obviously wasn't good today, and really most of his outings have always been kind of shaky. Like even last year, we spoke about this a lot, that they were very careful with how they used him. They would only ask him to get, 3, 4, maybe 5 outs a week. And they were very particular about what situations they'd put him in and when they would pull him out. He had a very short leash last year, and I thought they did a great job of managing it. That's how you have a guy who throws 22 innings and has an ERA under 1. And we've kind of said all along, he's expected to kind of take that next step and be a 9th inning guy. And ultimately, like, I just don't think it was that crazy of an ask in a 2-run game to be like, hey, just go get us 3 outs real quick. Let's call it a day. Fouch needs to be better, no doubt about that. But to say he's not a reliable pitcher right now, we're talking about a guy that's given up, 3 earned runs in the last, 36 innings of his career. I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot, and we're going to have a same conversation with Will McIntyre where, last week after Will McIntyre throws twice and it doesn't go well for him on Sunday, everyone says, well, you just can't use McIntyre. And I'm like, so you don't want to use him for the 80 innings you used him a couple of years ago, or even what I think it was 54 innings he threw last year. We agree that was too much, but now we're just not going to use him at all. Clearly, and I mean, today is a good example, there is a situation where you can use Will McIntyre and he can be effective. We've seen it throughout his career. Every single year he's been at Arkansas, he's gotten huge outs for them in some form or fashion. And I think there's definitely a path to him doing that now. I just didn't like the idea of using him twice last weekend. And I don't like the idea of him throwing 60, 70 innings on the year for Arkansas, which is what he basically did the last 2 seasons. But it's like, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. When a guy has a bad outing, well, let's just never use him again. And when he has a good outing, oh, now he's the closer. I literally saw someone, not going to throw any names, but I saw people tweeting. They were like, Will McIntyre, he the new closer? And I'm like, how are y'all so reactionary? We're like, we can't just take an outing for what it is. But it's very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. Shout out to the Ladner fam. This is my fam. These are my nephews, nieces. Shout out to them for tapping in. Always got to give them a shout out when I see their names pop up. Let's see. Big Donnelly says, a lot to unpack, but glad to get the sweep. Either Charlotte is going to be a force or we got some explaining to do. I don't really understand this comment. I mean, I think Charlotte's a pretty solid team, and I feel like Arkansas did what they were supposed to do, which is won the games against them and had to dig deep for them. But I feel like there's room for Arkansas to just be very good and Charlotte to be pretty good. I think that's kind of where we're at. But to each their own. Let's see. There's a few comments like this. Hogzilla says, a lot to raise my eyebrows about, but we got the sweep. Is it really a lot though? Fouch's outing, yeah, of course, you need him to be better. I think really today is probably more of an indication that he's not a 2 times per weekend guy, because he was really good I didn't say really good. He hit a couple guys. He was a lot better Friday when he pitched. Maybe bringing him back for the second outing isn't the way to go about it. Maybe you can just get 2 innings out of him on Friday. Maybe that's the way to go about it. But his outing was rough. Gackel's outing was rough. Outside of that, is there really any big picture sign this weekend that has everyone concerned? I'm sure they will. Once I get through this chat, I'm sure I will find more. But I don't know if there was a ton to raise eyebrows about. I felt like it was a pretty solid weekend of baseball all around for the most part from both sides of the plate, or both sides, both dugouts. Lane Hedge, my guy, he says, I'm just happy that Nolan Souza got a hit. Absolutely. I mean, fired up, man. That fired me up seeing Nolan Souza come through in that situation. And hopefully that gets him going, man, because I definitely think he's a guy that raises this offensive ceiling. And we'll see. Arkansas still doesn't really have much of a definitive lineup every day. But I think today is a prime example that, that's okay. It doesn't really matter who you start. You might see 11, 12 guys come in and give you productive at-bats at the plate or innings in the field. And Souza certainly is in that mix. Alex Eden says, love to see Coyle and Maxwell become the heroes. Well-deserved. Fun series this weekend. Yeah, Maxwell, it's good to see Maxwell get going for sure, man. He's a guy that has been banged up. He hit 300 both years he was at TCU, so you knew there was some level of, a safe bet that he was going to produce on some level for you. So it's good to see him starting to do that. Had a couple home runs this weekend as well. I thought it was just a really productive weekend for him to kind of solidify his spot in the lineup. And Coyle continues to just emerge as a no doubt circle of trust guy. And I think at this point he's kind of becoming Arkansas's like bail him out of trouble guy is where he's at now. We touched on this a little bit, but Caden Jowers asked, why was Coyle taken out in the ninth? Again, like I really don't think it was more about taking Coyle out as much as it was, like I said earlier, when you get to the ninth inning, you usually just go to the guy that's been closing for you. And that's what Christian Fouch has been doing that for Arkansas. And he had been doing a pretty good job. Carson Wiggins as well did it yesterday. You could argue maybe they go to him, but he had thrown yesterday compared to Fouch throwing on Friday. All offseason long, we've been saying Christian Fouch was going to be the closer. So I don't know why everyone is trying to act like they're like surprised that Arkansas went to Christian Fouch in the ninth inning. He just didn't come through. And so now we can evaluate it and we can talk about, hey, should they go to Christian Fouch in the ninth? Should they use him twice a weekend? But we don't have to go in hindsight and pretend like it was like a crazy concept that Arkansas used Christian Fouch in the ninth inning. It was more about that than it was benching Parker Coyle, so to speak. Nick says, way too early to be worried about this team. I would also think they would need to be worse than 10-1 before we're worried. But no, I agree, Nick. I think it's definitely like too early to be like drawing definitive conclusions about really anything, frankly. So no doubt about that. And Hog on it says Coyle and Wiggins are the 1-2 closers. Yeah, Coyle, weirdly enough, like I know it's going to sound crazy. I think using Coyle as a closer is almost like I feel like you could get more out of him. Of course, like, when the ninth inning rolls around, you want a guy that you can depend on. But I feel like Coyle, I mean, he threw almost 4 innings for Arkansas this weekend. So I guess hypothetically you could bring him in 6th or 7th inning. He could just close it from there. But I don't know, like that's a lot to put on a guy. I think the way that they've been using Coyle is pretty ideal. Like, I mean, he's obviously performed well, which helps. But I think throwing him 2 innings on Friday and then 2 innings on Sunday is probably, I mean, clearly he shows he can do it. His best inning of the weekend was his 4th inning. I think that's maybe the best way to use him. I think Wiggins is certainly going to close. And guys, believe it or not, I know we have to pretend like he sucks right now because he sucked today, but like Christian Fouch is still going to close games for Arkansas. Definitely at the start of a weekend. Now we can argue about whether he needs to do that twice in a weekend, but Arkansas's got a lot of options. And then of course you have the sinking like wild card over here is whoever ends up being left out of that rotation when Gage Wood comes back, and it might end up being him. That guy's going to be closing games as well. So when you get into it, Arkansas is going to have plenty of options. Shout out to Garrett McCollum, good friend of the program. He says Nolan Souza has arrived. He has. I'd like for him to get a midweek start and maybe rattle off like 3 hits, just like unload on one. I think Arkansas plays ULM on Tuesday or something like that. So yeah, hopefully that gets him going a little bit. We'll see how he can make it work, but would love to see that guy get going. You see how hot Kahio Aloy is. I'm not saying Nolan Souza's about to do that, but he's that kind of like boomer bust where, I mean, and we've seen that with Kahio Aloy a little bit. He has some at-bats where you're like, holy cow, this guy's missing by a foot. He's way off of it. And then he has some at-bats where it's like, oh, he was going to hit no matter what you threw at him. Nolan Souza kind of has that boomer bust, hot and cold mentality a little bit. He's that kind of player. And so it would be really cool if they could get him hot and then we could just see how far that goes. William Fleming says, I was feeling pretty uneasy about this team until I saw A&M fall off a cliff. Now I'm thankful we at least took care of business this weekend. Yeah, man, there's a lot of teams that are just in dogfights. Like we always, and like, look, another thing that happens is you have teams like, I think it was Oregon who played Columbia University and they beat them 35-1 yesterday. And so you see that and you're like, okay, we're playing a non-SEC team. We should beat them 35-1. But if you kind of look around college baseball, if you're playing in some of these programs that Arkansas plays, they do this a lot where like Washington State's not like a great team or anything, but they went to Iowa, a pretty good Iowa program, and beat them in a series this weekend. They're clearly like a program. Like they're not like a good team necessarily, but like they're not a team that you just run rule 3 times and call it a day. And I think Charlotte definitely fits that bill where Arkansas did what they were supposed to do. They beat them 3 times, but Charlotte is not the type of team you schedule if you're looking for just stat padding and run ruling necessarily. Obviously in a weekend series at home, it's not as much competition as you're facing down the road. But if y'all want to see Arkansas just absolutely dog walk some teams. We can get UCA in here for a weekend series, a 3-game weekend series, and all of Arkansas's lineup will have the gaudiest stats ever. But Arkansas, we won't really know anything about Arkansas's team. It would just look good on paper. And so sometimes you see those scores and it kind of throws you off. But yeah, if you look around, I mean, that Kansas State team that Arkansas lost to, that we all were kind of panicking, myself included, they took LSU to extra innings just the other day. And then they beat a ranked Nebraska team today. That Kansas State team might be in the top 25 this next weekend. So, like, there's a lot of talent around college baseball. It's really hard to find teams, unless you just go out of your way trying to find a team that sucks. You're not going to have many of these weekend series that it's just, just run rules galore over there. Yeah, Logan, my guy Logan, friend of the program, he says, hell of an outing by Cheese. That was big time, man. Again, I imagine he's going to be one of my winners of the weekend tomorrow. I thought that was a big time. One, Arkansas needed it because, it's not that Arkansas is short on pitching, but anytime your Friday night guy only goes 3 innings, it kind of puts some stress on the rest of your staff. And of course, on the heels of Gage Wood's injury too, it would be very easy. There would be a lot of teams. Hell, Charlotte kind of ran out of pitching this weekend, and there's other SEC teams who don't have as many options as Arkansas. If Beidelshees only goes 4 innings in this game, think about what would have happened. You probably would have had to bring Dylan Carter back for another inning. You probably would have had to throw Cole Gibbler, a true freshman, into a high leverage situation. Like, it would have made this a lot more stressful and a lot more difficult. The fact that he was able to get Arkansas into the 7th inning, just massive. And get him out there with a lead. Should have got the win. It's tough. Let's see. Sharkansas says there are 3 times as many no-hitters as there are immaculate innings in professional baseball. What Coyle did today was very special. That's a crazy stat, which, kind of checks out because you see no-hitters. Like, we hear about no-hitters every single baseball season. There's someone in the MLB who throws a no-hitter like once a month, it feels like. You really don't hear about too many immaculate innings. So that's interesting. So, yeah, what Coyle did today, man, was unreal. It's always fun to watch. And he's just in a groove, man. It's good to see a junior pitcher putting it all together and, playing his best ball as a junior now that he's draft eligible. It's just good to see. David says, no errors. What world is this? I mean, Arkansas has been playing historically great defense for several years now. Like, that's kind of one of the things that has set Arkansas apart as a program is they don't make a ton of mistakes. And credit to Charlotte as well. I think they made maybe 1 error on Friday, maybe 1 error yesterday, but they don't kick the ball around too much. I don't know. Did they make an error today? I don't think so. No, it does not look like either team made an error. But so, yeah, I guess you don't see that a ton in college baseball. I don't think Arkansas made an error this entire weekend. Coming into today, Arkansas was fielding at a 983 clip, which I don't know where that ranks in the country. I would imagine pretty high. Arkansas's program record for fielding percentage is like 981, and that was set here in the last 4 or 5 years. And so coming into today, Arkansas was fielding at a pretty historic rate. That number is certainly going to go up every year, man. It's just that's one thing you got to give this coaching staff credit for. They find a way to field a really good defense that just doesn't make mistakes. And I don't know if Arkansas right now is necessarily, I'm not saying this is like better than the 2022 defense that had all those big leaguers in the infield, but like they don't give games away. And that's makes a huge difference in games like this, these tight series that come down to just a few runs here or there. It's big time. Samuel Brooks says, Andrew, how long do you think Baby Aloy can keep up the insane hitting numbers? So let's see. According to Stat Broadcast, his batting average has plummeted after going 2 for 4. His batting average has plummeted all the way to 556. It got up to 600 there when he was 2 for 2. Well, he's not going to hit 556 for the season. But I think I saw a tweet. Who was that? Was it maybe Andrew Hutchinson? Maybe it was Jackson Fuller. It was some beat writer at Arkansas, so I feel bad because I'm not giving the proper credit. But he said that Kahio Aloy could go 0 for his next 24 and would still be hitting 300. And I think that might have been before he got out a couple times, so maybe it's 0 for 22 now. But yeah, I mean those numbers are going to sustain for a good bit. He is a boomer bust hitter. Like, he's going to have a stretch where he comes down to earth a little bit. But I think it's just good for Arkansas to have a guy who is such a threat in the lineup. I feel like it just kind of affects everything, makes Arkansas as a 1 through 9 unit harder to pitch to. It's big time. Let's see. Shout out to my guy Hayden Ulmer, a good friend of mine. He says, "Love a sweep. Are we concerned with Fouch came in a little late?" Yeah. I'm concerned because he really hasn't had like a clean outing yet this year. Each time even the 2 saves he's got and the 1 win he got, he really had to like battle a little bit. Always has some type of traffic in there, but ultimately, like it's really not that complicated with Christian Fouch. Of course, again, I think that's now of his last 2 seasons at Arkansas, he's given up runs in 3 outings so far. This was one of those 3. And on a day where he gives up a run, it's like, oh yeah, this guy sucks. But like when you throw 98 with a splitter and a slider behind it, and you're being asked to get 3 outs most of the time, like it's not like Arkansas is asking him to go 3-4 innings. He's gonna probably get the job done more often than not. So like I would like for him to be a little bit cleaner. He can definitely afford to clean some things up and be a little sharper. I definitely don't like the pitches going to the backstop. I don't like. It seems like he hits a guy damn near every outing. You don't love that, but like at the end of the day, he's going to get paid a lot of money to pitch for a reason. And with the role Arkansas is going to be asking him to play, I think you can count on him more often than not. But we'll see how it plays out, man. I definitely don't think they're going to use him twice on a weekend again. Let's see. Lane Hedge says, I think the one thing that pleases me is that we were productive with runners in scoring position. Game 1, 6 of 13. Game 2, 4 of 13. Game 3, 4 of 10. Yeah, love that. Those numbers will definitely play. And those numbers, of course, are just always going to fluctuate like anything. And I said this last year when Arkansas was struggling and people were like, man, they suck with runners in scoring position. And I'd say, no, just look at their overall hitting numbers. They just suck, period. And then when they're runners in scoring position, you have what is already a bottom 4 offense. So, of course, they're going to produce at a bottom 4 level there. With the way this offense swung the bat this weekend, they swung it pretty well. That carries over into runners in scoring position. Whereas if it's a little bit different, having runners on first and third with 1 out is always a big situation, but it's a little bit different when you have action just about every inning. You're constantly stringing together good at-bats and constantly putting pressure on your opponent. That pressure is more on them than it is on you. Whereas if you are 9 up, 9 down for the first 3 innings, then you get a leadoff double in the 4th, it's like still a little tense just because you're kind of not used to being in these situations. The pitcher's in the stretch for the first time. It's a little bit easier to battle whenever it's your first base runner you're facing. And so I just think with Arkansas, that's what I liked. There were a couple 1, 2, 3 innings in this game. I believe in maybe the 4th and 5th. I didn't like how they let that starter get through 5 innings. But they, like most innings, Arkansas did a good job of just kind of making these pitchers work, running that pitch count up, putting pressure on their opponent. And then of course the runners in scoring position, you got it. That's kind of the final part of that equation. And again, Arkansas also just had some productive at-bats that led to it as well. Like Ryder Helfrich, his 2 walks I thought were very productive as well. There were a lot of times where like you get a leadoff double from Brent Iredale, and then you get Kahio Aloy just kind of taps one, but that gets Brent Iredale to third base. Of course, a wild pitch brought him home, but Arkansas is starting to do some of those little things that are big time. Let's see. HH says, my wife was being a major Fouch hater this weekend. Well, wasn't a great outing for Fouch. So I mean, what are you going to do? When a guy doesn't pitch well, like there's really like not much you could do. Of course, you can say in hindsight, yeah, I shouldn't have brought him in. Okay, yeah, sure. That's kind of where we're at with Fouch now. But like I said, it's not like the premise of bringing him in was that crazy. Lane follows up with, when I saw McIntyre come in, my initial thought was, really him? Why not Fouch? Well, he came in for Fouch, so that would have been tough. But give Will McIntyre his credit, by the way. I'm not seeing anybody giving Will McIntyre his flowers in the chat. This is a dude who's done it all for Arkansas throughout his career, man. And look, before I even say anything else on Will McIntyre, because I know a lot of people really don't like the guy or just are tired of seeing a pitch. I don't know. If Arkansas had better options, then Will McIntyre wouldn't be out there. And we've said that about a lot of guys, whether it's Simeon Blair in football or Cole Ramage or whoever. If Arkansas had better options, Will McIntyre wouldn't be out there. Hell, if Christian Fouch had just done his job today and gotten another save, we wouldn't have seen Will McIntyre this entire weekend. But when things get tight, and I've been saying this all offseason, I understand the people that say you want to see a reduced role for Will McIntyre. I'm not even going to push back against that. I agree with you. I don't think he's going to be having as many high leverage innings as he's had the last couple of years. But if you think there's not a role for him on this team, he's got so much experience in these big moments. He's got that low heartbeat in these times of pressure. Arkansas needed him today, man. You have a guy who's going to get drafted in the 3rd round who you couldn't rely on to get the 3 outs, but sometimes you just need that guy who's going to come in and throw that cutter and keep him off balance. Will McIntyre did a good job, and again, he threw twice last weekend, and I said I don't love that. Here, where you're just asking him to come in and get 3 outs, he's like borderline overqualified for that role. And so I think you're going to see a much more effective version of Will McIntyre with a reduced role. And I think he's going to be a guy you can count on, honestly. He's just been in these situations, whether it's starting, closing, mid relief, long relief. Will McIntyre has appeared in every type of situation possible. He's seen it all. And so it's you could do a lot worse than having a guy like that kind of in your back pocket. And that's how that's how it played out today. Let's see. Lane Hedge says, I need to see a dominant performance from Gackle next weekend, or I will start worrying about him as our ace. Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard not to worry about a guy when he gives up 9 runs. Definitely concerning, and it'll be interesting to see kind of what those vibes are like. Dave didn't even budge the other day. He said he's going to get another start next week, and he didn't say necessarily that it would be on Friday night, but he's going to be in that weekend rotation again. And of course, with Gage Wood out, it's not like Arkansas has a ton of options anyway. Honestly, Gabe Gackle is too talented not to figure it out to some extent. But again, this is a guy that is being billed as a potential 1st round pick, one of the top prospects. I think I saw a prospect list that had him top 5 in his class for next year. So this is a guy with a ton of high expectations, and we can kind of wonder about that. But I mean, in terms of stuff, in terms of mentality, in terms of repeatable delivery, I just feel like there's too many pros that Gabe Gackle brings to the table for him not to be really successful. Maybe just don't tip pitches. That would be my advice to the young lad. Let's see. Madison Holzer says, was there at game 2 behind the plate? I thought the crowd atmosphere was fun and engaging. Would you agree? And how does it compare to the crowd atmosphere when we host a regional or a rival? So yeah, yesterday, I can't remember that exact number, but they put out the attendance record and it was like 10,900 something, like just under 11,000. And I don't know if that was tickets scanned or tickets sold. I don't really know, but I thought it was awesome yesterday. Yeah, Saturday was definitely the best crowd of the weekend. I was not at the park today. Of course, I was here. Looked like a lighter crowd today. Just a little bit colder. But yeah, I thought Friday and Saturday the crowd filled in pretty well. Love to see that. And yeah, it wasn't quite a regional crowd. You'd have just seen a few more bodies, maybe a little bit more tense anxiety, hectic, maybe a little bit more drunk of a crowd. But yeah, I think that's kind of what sets Arkansas apart, man, is that they'll get in 10, 11,000 for weekend non-conference series on the weekend. And if it's any indication of what it's going to be like later in conference play, when you have the A&Ms and Tennessees and Texases of the world come into town, I think we're going to see some absolutely insane atmospheres. Because I agree, Madison. I thought Saturday, it would be hard to find a better college baseball atmosphere around the country. Of course, Arkansas's had tons that were better. But like that crowd that we saw on Saturday would rival most programs around the country, all but about 3 or 4. That would be their best crowd, best atmosphere of the year. So, definitely worth noting. Yeah, Nick has a good comment here. He says, if he brings Coyle back out in the 9th and shits the bed, then all hell would break loose about why Fouch wasn't in there. Also, it is just funny to me that I put Christian. So, everything I say goes to you guys. It goes on the internet. You can track all this stuff. So it's not, you could say this is revisionist history. When I did a Circle of Trust about 3 weeks ago before the season, I had Parker Coyle as a no doubt Circle of Trust guy. And I got pushback from that. People were like, are we sure you can count on Parker Coyle? I mean, he had a 7-something ERA last year. He didn't really seem to get that much better as a sophomore. There was a lot of skepticism around Parker Coyle coming into the year. And look, for good reason. He definitely struggled as a sophomore, but he was really good this offseason. Seemed like he took that next step. So it's funny now that everyone's kind of gone full the other way. Hope that didn't sound horrible for y'all, me smacking my mic. But it's gone all the way the other way to now people are like, Parker Coyle should pitch every inning. And it's like, okay, can we agree that the reality, the truth is somewhere in the middle? With McIntyre, it's always, we need to have him as the closer or the Friday night starter, or don't pitch him at all. The answer's somewhere in between. Christian Fouch, he's either the for sure closer or he's unreliable altogether. The answer is somewhere in between. And so that's kind of what these games here are all about, is kind of putting these guys in situations, finding out how they thrive the best, and then going and using them the best way you can. Camo Gang says Wiggins or whatever freshman throwing 98, 84 off speed needs to be a starter. Throw him to the Wolves with that type of gas. Here's the problem, Camo Gang. And like Wiggins almost certainly will start. I mean, he's only going to be at Arkansas for 2 years because he's draft eligible next year. Literally what you're saying right now, Camo Gang, would apply to Gabe Gackle last year. And in fact, we heard a lot of that. Why don't you just throw Gackle in the rotation? And now Gackle's in the rotation, and y'all don't like him in the rotation. So again, the shiny new toy always seems like a better idea than whatever you have currently. But Gabe Gackle literally last year was the freshman closer that was throwing 98 and mixing in. He was throwing an 88 mile an hour off speed pitch. So it's like, again, I feel like it's okay to not, hey, we have this cool piece. Let's see how much we can use them. I think it's better to kind of be smart with how you do it, be a little bit more selective, maybe build them up gradually. And then by the end of the year, if you feel like Wiggins is one of your top 3 reliable multi-inning arms, then yeah, maybe you give him a chance. But I think Arkansas has the luxury of having some veterans in the rotation, especially when you get Gage Wood back and a guy in Gackle who's one of the best prospects in his class, to where they can bring Wiggins along slowly. I don't currently see the need to rush him into action. And by the way, again, another just example of how overreactionary we are. Literally last Sunday, Wiggins comes in and doesn't get an out, gives up a base hit, walks the next batter on 4 pitches, goes 2-0 to the next. And I'm getting comments of people doing victory laps, being like, I told you, we can't trust Carson Wiggins. We can't trust him. And it's like, are we just going to do this every weekend where when a guy pitches poorly, we're like, cut him, throw his scholarship away. He should never pitch again. And then he has one good outing and we're like, well, closer to me. I mean, you know what? Friday night starter for him. Like, it's okay to just kind of let it play out and we'll just see the best way to use some of these guys. Like if a guy thrives in one role, I don't know if moving him to a different role is always the answer necessarily. Let's see. And then Lane says, surprised we didn't see Gibbler this weekend. Yeah, he got up and in the bullpen a couple times on Saturday. I thought he was going to come in there for sure. Ended up just kind of playing out the way it did. I'll be interested to see. I wouldn't hate giving Gibbler a midweek start. And I see this next Caleb here, who's a great commenter, great chatter, by the way, despite being, I believe, a Rangers fan. He says Bybee and Gibbler starting pitchers against ULM. So let me pull this up real quick. Is this a 2-game midweek series? Is it one of those? I always kind of hate those, to be honest with you. Let's see. Yes, it is a 2-game midweek series. Arkansas plays Tuesday at 3 and then Wednesday at 3. So, yeah, you might have 2 midweek starters there. I could see, I mean, Bybee's been starting midweeks since I was in grade school. So it seems like Bybee would probably be one of those guys. I love the idea, Caleb, of using Gibbler as a midweek starter. That's something I've been kind of banging the drum for months now, leading up to the season, where I was like, I really feel like Gibbler, is a future weekend starter, but a guy that has pitched some on the weekends, and I think he could still have a role. I mean, he's only thrown 2 innings so far, both scoreless. But I'd love to see him get some work, especially since he didn't this weekend. So I'd maybe throw, if it were up to me, I'd throw Gibbler on Tuesday, maybe 2-3 innings. If it goes well, take him out, because then you can bring him back on Friday or Saturday or Sunday, and then throw Bybee on Wednesday and just, probably the same type of thing, maybe only 2 or 3 innings, just kind of piece it together. I'd love to see some of these freshman arms like a Tag Andrews or a Ross Felder make their first outing this weekend. Would definitely, or this week during the midweek would be awesome. Let's see. Drew Bynum says more questions than answers in the lineup. Well, what questions do you have? I guess is where I would go. Cause I mean, let's just go on down the diamond real quick. So at catcher, I know everybody's not thrilled about Ryder Helfrich, but again, I know he had a couple good at-bats in this game that came around to be big walks for Arkansas. He's a guy with a lot of talent, one of the better prospects in his class. And we really like Zane Becker behind him. So I feel like catcher, there's not really much of a question unless you just want to say, hey, they should start Becker, which, I'm not there yet, but I guess you can consider that. I don't really view that as much of a question mark. Third base, Brent Iredale has been really good this year, hitting over 350. Don't consider him a question mark at all. Vahiva Aloy, he's been really good this year, hitting about 350 as well. Second base, of course, that's one that you would consider a question because you've got Nolan Souza. Maybe today gets him going, but you've also got Cam Kojal there if you really need. He's been swinging the bat pretty well. Got another base hit today. First base is the one you never know who's going to be there, but the answer to those questions are pretty simple. And you'd have Rocco Pepe, who's proven a lot. He's pretty over the course of his career, he's been really good. Had a good productive swing for Arkansas today. Came through with a huge hit, I believe it was on Friday, that really turned the tide in that game. And then, of course, Kojal, who's been pretty good, is kind of your fallback option. And in the outfield, I feel like Arkansas's got more potential starters than they have spots. Because, I mean, Davalon's a starter-level guy. He didn't get to start today. Justin Thomas is a starter-level guy. He didn't get to start yesterday. Logan Maxwell's a starter-level guy. He got 3 starts today, but even he's been in and out of the lineup. Kendall Diggs has been historically, a middle-of-the-order type of guy. He only started once this weekend. So Arkansas's actually got more. And then Carson Bowles even came off the bench and went 1 for 2 as well. So it's like Arkansas's got a ton of options in the outfield, more than they actually need. I think it's just a matter of who the 9 guys end up being, but I don't think Arkansas has a ton of question marks in the lineup right about now. And then Flying Blind follows it up and says, more questions than answers. Vahiva, Maxwell, Iredell, Cahillo, Kojal, Pepe, and Justin Thomas. Yeah, I'd say those are answers. And hell, you can throw in a few more names that could potentially end up, being everyday starters for you. And then Drew followed up with good questions, not bad questions in line, to be sure. Okay, I can get behind that because they are questions. I feel like the answers we kind of know between. It's just a matter of, do you want to start Pepe at first or Kojal at first? Do you want to start Maxwell in right or Diggs in right, or Thomas in center and Davalon in left, or Maxwell in there's all these different. But it's not like questions where we're like panicking and don't know. And see, Camo Gang's doubling down. He says Wiggins can go 4 or 5. Give him a start since we're shaky on Fridays. I don't know, man. I'm not really there with Carson Wiggins as a multi-inning. Like, I think the best way to use Wiggins right now is to let him be a flamethrower in the bullpen, and I feel like he does a good job there. His stuff and like just the hard fastball with the hard slider combo, that's kind of the 2-pitch mix he has right now, which, a lot of freshmen in college that are starting their careers don't even have 2 pitches. He's got a pretty devastating 2-pitch mix. To be a starter, you really do kind of need that 3rd pitch. And I don't know if Wiggins necessarily has that right now, but even if he did have it, like I said, we could have done this same exact conversation with Gackle last year. It seemed like a no-brainer. Oh yeah, just throw him in the rotation and he'll be great. It hasn't gone that way yet. I think it's going to take a lot more than one bad outing for Gackle to get demoted, especially because it wasn't like we came into this season wondering if Gabe Gackle was going to start. We never had that question at all. So I'm not going to like all of a sudden start panicking and being like, actually, let's move him back to the bullpen, Oh man. What Hayden Ulmer says, what Andrew is trying to say is Wazoo and Charlotte aren't dead dogs. No, that is sure. That is sure. David says, are we sure Cahillo will drop off? I mean, we're sure he's not going to hit 550. Let's be clear on that. As much as I'm pumping the brakes on like negative overreactions, I'm also not going to I also think we should pump the brakes on, yeah, this guy's going to hit 600 for the season. But obviously, like I said, I think he could go 0 for his next 22 and still be hitting 300. So he can afford to fall off a good bit. But yeah, I mean, he's going to be a guy that ultimately, whenever you get to SEC play, is probably going to be more in that range where he goes like 3 for 12 in a weekend. But those 3 are going to be like 2 home runs and a double that drive in a lot of runs. If he can continue to draw his walks, which I feel like he's done a good job of laying off some tough pitches when people are trying to get him out in front with some breaking balls. If he can continue to take his walks, it's going to be huge. JT says K-Aloy seems to be not as boom or bust. His oppo hits and takes are impressive. Well, he definitely hasn't been as boom or bust this year. But again, like I'm just getting in front of this now because I know that, again, I know how everybody works. When he has a bad weekend here in the next few weeks, people are going to overreact the other way and say, well, he was just beating up on bad pitching. He can't hit in the SEC. People are going to do that. And really, it's just, you kind of have to live with it. And again, I'm not making this up. Like leading into the season, in the 9 scrimmages leading up to the season, Cahillo Aloy was 3 for 20 with like 9 strikeouts. And I'm not saying he's going to ever hopefully he doesn't do that ever in any 220 at-bat stretch, but like that is kind of like him and his brother are very like hot or cold type of guys. Both of them have been hot here to start the year, and I think Vahiva is really rounded out his approach. There's definitely going to be, especially once you get into SEC and you're facing high level arms, all these guys are going to have their ups and downs. That's just kind of baseball. That's just hitting. But definitely, like I've been saying leading into the weekend, like until he cools off, man, he needs to just be stuck there in that middle of that lineup. And I definitely think this is a guy that has such a high ceiling. Keep in mind, 15 months ago, he was not even a hitter at the collegiate level. He came to school as a pitcher. And so he's continuing to kind of figure this thing out on the fly. And he had a pretty solid freshman year there at BYU, hit 269. I think he's going to get hit higher than that at Arkansas. And so going into next year, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how high his ceiling really ends up being. And see, Porkenstein says Mac is the baseball Hudson Clark, and I'm assuming this is Will McIntyre. Yeah, I think this is fair, and it's a perfect. And again, because people probably see that and they say, yeah, Hudson Clark and Will McIntyre, the worst players ever. And I would say both of those guys are like pretty like average for the most part, but they're just, again, if Arkansas had better players, they would not be starting. But they're kind of a victim of their own overachieving to an extent. Guys that started as walk-ons and then kind of worked their way up and kind of overachieved to the point where the expectations rise too high. And now here you go. Let's see. So Hog On It says, is that not a statement that we didn't have a better option than Will McIntyre in that moment, though? Give him his props, sure, but he hasn't been consistent since early last year. I mean, again, like the guy that Arkansas started the frame with was a guy that is a top 250 overall projected draft pick, a guy that throws 100. They had a better option. He just didn't come through, and so they had to go to McIntyre. But Arkansas, it's not like Arkansas was scraping the bottom of the barrel necessarily. I mean, a guy like Ben Bybee, who I just talked about as a junior, has your mid-90s stuff, all the stuff you look for, all the stuff that we gawk over. Arkansas didn't even use him this weekend. Cole Gibler's a guy I really like. They didn't even use him this weekend. They had Dylan Carter up there and moving. It's not like Will McIntyre was the only guy that Arkansas could have gone to. He just hadn't thrown yet this weekend, and it kind of made sense to go to him, and he turned out to be the right guy. But it's not like Arkansas was in a panic where they were like, oh, crap, who are we going to go to? Arkansas had a lot more arms left than Charlotte did. John Doe says, how did Diggs do this weekend? He went 1 for 3 with a walk. He only got one start. He didn't play in today's game. He did come in as a defensive replacement in Friday's game, but in his one start, swung the bat pretty well. Had a good piece of hitting. Should have came around to score if not for a sketchy stop sign from Bobby Wernis, but went 1 for 3 with a walk. Nothing crazy. Let's see. And now Hog On It says, you can rotate Gackle back as a closer when Wood comes back and he doesn't fit as good as a starter. I mean, maybe, but again, we might be doing the same thing because with Gage Wood, because it very well, I know everyone always views it as like whoever's not starting, they always think there's like 3 or 4 guys on the team who could just step in and start and do way better. Let's just let it play out. Like Gackle was really bad on Friday night. No doubt about that. He's got to clean it up. He has to be better, but I don't want to close the book on the top 5 projected overall pick as a 19-year-old. Like, I think you got to give him a little bit of time to kind of work through it a little bit. Same with a lot of these guys. Michael Kopesky says, bigger concern is who DVH has in the lineup 1 through 9. Diggs and Souza look like they just don't have any ownership of the box. You can guess 9 or 10, guess right when they swing. This is a funny thing to say because neither guy was in the starting lineup today. Funny to be like, hey, he's got the wrong guys in the lineup. He's got to get Diggs and Souza out. Neither guy was in the starting lineup today, big guy. But Souza did come in off the bench and then had a huge hit and scored the game-winning run. So if that's what you're upset about, And then see, John Doe says, hope to see Diggs set it off. How was Pepe at first? Pepe was fine at first. I mean, he didn't have any plays that were like, he didn't have to make any web gems necessarily, but he fielded everything that was hit at him. And then they brought in Reese Robinette as a defensive replacement later in the game. And I think Diggs is going to get his opportunities. I think Arkansas, they've got about 12 guys. I spoke about this the other day, and I didn't even include Carson Bowles or Gabe Frazier in this list, and they both started today. But I feel like Arkansas's got about 12 guys with the 9 starters that you kind of expect every day, plus Diggs, plus either Souza or Pepe, whoever you want to use, and plus Zane Becker, who we for some reason did not see this weekend. Don't know what happened there, but I think among those 12 guys, you're just going to continue to rotate, mix and match based on matchups, and do what you got to do. Let's see what else we got. Mobley says, do we have an ETA on Wood? Not an ETA, and I think it's going to take a while. They said 3 to 6 weeks on the broadcast today, which I think is probably like the projected range. So I guess that is your ETA because it's estimated time of arrival. But I think you're going to have to just wait and see when he picks up a ball again and when he starts throwing. We won't really know because right now he's in that rest and rehab, and then he'll get back on the mound and start throwing here in a couple weeks. But it's kind of, it's kind of up in the air right now. So I wouldn't be holding my breath waiting for him to like pitch any week. I think it's going to be a couple weeks before we really hear anything definitive. Let's see. I think Kopesky says Wood will be back for SEC play 4 more weeks at minimum. Well, which one is it? Because SEC play is in 2 weeks. I think Wood being back by SEC play would probably be optimistic. If I had to give my very unprofessional opinion on this, I would say that he's not going to be back for that Ole Miss series. That's just a guess. I don't know. I mean, maybe he'll get back on the mound in a few days and he'll just be guns a-blazing and ready to roll. I would say probably like a couple, 2 or 3 weeks after that. And luckily for Arkansas, the back half of the SEC schedule is a lot more difficult than the front half. So ideally, if there was a stretch you would really want Gage Wood for, it'd be those final 5 series. So as long as he's back by then, all will be well. But really, you just want to make the best decision for the individual who, is a very notable, very respected prospect in his own right. You definitely don't want to rush him back and then it maybe not go as well. Take as much time as they need, and you definitely don't want him to re-injure himself. Let's see. Big Donnelly says if there was consistently the same lineup and they were cruising, you wouldn't see people with so many concerns with all the fall ball and spring ball. We still don't have a solid 1 through 9. No, this is probably fair. And look, this is big picture, like a concern that I kind of have where I kind of feel like it's hard for guys to get a groove when they're not starting every day. Like Logan Maxwell has swung the bat really well this weekend. I think it helped that he started 4 straight games, and I think 5 straight going back to Sunday. I think that's helped him get into a groove, knowing that he's hitting third every day. He's getting 4 at-bats every game, kind of lets him get in a roll a little bit. And Kahio Aloy, who swung the bat well last weekend, but getting 4 straight starts, I feel like kind of helped him continue that groove a little bit. And so I think it's tough for a lot of these guys like Pepe or like Souza, or even honestly like Cam Kojal, who's been getting jerked around a little bit. Like, it's tough for them to really get a consistent groove because they're not playing every day. So I'd like to see them settle. But ultimately, I'm kind of wavering on that stance because I just don't know how you can like for sure bench guys like this. Because like, for instance, no matter what lineup Arkansas does, it's likely going to have one of either Diggs, Maxwell, Pepe, Souza, or Kojal. It's going to have at least 2 of those guys on the bench, pretty much every lineup, or Kahio Aloy. You're just going to have to bench 2 or 3 really good guys every day. And so it's really tough for me to say, yeah, they need to commit to a solid 1 through 9 lineup, because you would be basically benching guys that I think have high ceilings, and some guys, like in the case of Rocco Pepe or Kendall Diggs, that have a pretty long track record of being productive. And so it's tough. You just never know. I don't envy these coaches having to make these decisions, but we'll see. Cog on it says, I think Kojal is solid at second, which would put Souza at where? First, or Kojal then at first? I think so. I think if Arkansas was going with their best defensive lineup, it would have Kojal at first base and Souza at second base, based on everything they've done. Of course, Kojal's very much an option at second base. But if you're doing that, it kind of puts a question mark at first base. Pepe's been playing there. They clearly have no issue playing him. Maybe they feel like he's making strides and getting better there. Again, we haven't really seen a large sample size there. We'll see how it plays out. But I mean, Pepe could play first, but I think the best defensive lineup has Souza at second, Kojal at first. But I think Kojal is going to continue to move back and forth, because I think until Souza and Pepe, one of those guys just needs to take it and run with it. Like if Souza has 3 hits in the midweek game, maybe starts it off like hits well next weekend, then we can just go into conference play and say, hey, he's out of his slump. He's back to normal now. He's back to being the guy that we saw off season. That would be in Arkansas's best interest, because again, it allows you to play your best defensive lineup and allows Kojal to really stick there at first base. And then Rocco Pepe can kind of join the DH, right field, left field rotation a little bit, and perhaps even a spot start here or there at first base. But I really think ultimately you need some of these guys to just kind of step up and own it a little bit. Kojal is, I think, a for sure everyday guy, but really where he plays depends on who earns the spot every day between Souza and Pepe, if that makes sense. I don't really care where Kojal's at as long as they have the best 9 guys in there. Let's see. Madison says, I'd love for you to tell me how we're going to beat Tennessee. I can't stand them. Listen, I do not have the answer on how to beat Tennessee, and I don't think anybody right now has the answer. I think they are probably going to be number 1 in the polls on Monday, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but Arkansas gets them at home. They swept them the last time Tennessee came to Baum Walker Stadium, so we will see. But yeah, the Tennessee's very good. I wish I could give you more confidence, but I can't. There's not a ton when it comes to beating those guys. Drew Bynum says, is it possible to tip pitches with the current technology in place for calling pitches? It's always possible to tip pitches. The technology, all it does is basically relay what pitch to throw. So you're not like, the catcher's not putting down the fingers. But a lot of times when guys are tipping pitches, it's something they're doing with their glove or something they're doing as they come set, something they're doing with their hand on whether they have the ball, whether you can see it moving around. Some guys literally will grip it like a fastball. And so if they don't move it in their glove, they're throwing a fastball. Like there's just certain things you do to tip pitches. You can tip pitches doing literally anything. These coaching staffs are crazy at coming up with ways, and you just never know. It's a lot of times it's something that the pitcher definitely doesn't realize. Like a lot of times when you're tipping pitches, it's not like Arkansas is picking up their signals from the catcher. A lot of times it's what the pitcher is doing. And so no matter how you're signaling in those pitches, the pitcher can still give it away by his body language or what he does. And Hog on it wants to know, can Cahillo play anything positionally, like anything? So this is a question that we've been getting a lot here lately. So he played first base in the fall. Coming out of fall, I had him projected as the everyday first baseman. And then the first time we meet with DVH in January, he's like, nope, he's not playing first base. We're moving him to the outfield. We think that's where he's going to play down the road. Like that's going to be what we're going to try and work with him at. Rocco Pepe's going to try and play first base. And of course, that's kind of what they've been rolling with here. So it doesn't seem like Cahillo is an option at first base. And since he said that, he hasn't played first base in any scrimmages. He hasn't been taking ground balls at first base before any of the games. He seems to be an outfielder or bust, or outfielder or DH. And of course, every single time it's been DH this year. I would love to see Cahillo get a start at right field in a midweek game at some point this year. Ideally this week, when you have 2 midweek games, that would be a time to experiment. He came to college as a pitcher. He's got a really good arm. So ideally, if he can learn how to track down a fly ball, there's a position you can kind of learn how to do on the fly. Outfield is probably it. If he can get to the point where he's even serviceable in right field, it allows Arkansas to kind of get creative with what they're going to do. Allows them to DH someone like Pepe, or DH someone like Logan Maxwell, or DH someone like Ryder Helfrich and have Zane Becker catch, or just DH Zane Becker, just cut out the middleman. There's all kinds of things they can do if Cahillo can play the outfield. And I think next year, Cahillo's a sophomore right now. Going into next year, I think that'll be a big point of emphasis for him to raise his draft stock. Of course, his bat is going to make him a prospect with the way he swings it no matter what. But if he can prove to be even an average defender out there in the field, which he's got an above average arm, if he can just somewhat track down fly balls, I think he would be a very intriguing draft prospect going into next year. Let's see. Hayden Ulmer, a sound baseball mind, says the best version of this staff, in my opinion, is Gackle when he's what he's supposed to be, Root, Cheese, Wood as the psycho reliever twice a weekend. This is definitely like kind of coming into the year. That's kind of how I viewed it. And I haven't seen a ton that would really dissuade me from that. Of course, if you want to flip Wood and Vital Cheese, like that's perfectly fine to me. My personal opinion on it is that Wood has a higher upside as a closer than Vital Cheese does as a closer. I think Vital Cheese, if he's coming in for 1 inning, would look pretty electric. But like with the way Arkansas used him last weekend, they brought him in the 6th inning. It's hard to do the flame show in the 6th inning when you got 4 innings to pitch. And so we saw him really, he basically looked like a starter who was just being brought into the 6th inning, whereas someone like Wood with the fastball he's got now, I mean, his fastball was electric when it was 93, 95. it's even more electric now that it's 96, 98, and just has the, I mean, it's a flame show, man. It's crazy. It looks like a closer type fastball. I could see Gage Wood being like dynamite as a closer. I could see Gage Wood being very good as a starter as well. We didn't get to see his second start the season finish out, but like it looked pretty solid in the first one. If he's landing that breaking ball with the way his fastball plays, the way that he throws multiple, he throws a slider and a curveball, like I could definitely see Gage Wood being very good. But I think him as a psycho reliever makes a lot of sense, and so we'll see how they go about it when he gets back to action. And we'll see what Landon Beidelshees does in the rotation in that absence, because it's going to be 3-4 weeks most likely still on top of this. If Beidelshees continues to pitch the way he pitched today, I don't see how you take him out of the rotation. So we shall see. JT says, is Souza in danger of being Jason Jones? Why are we getting so many anti-Souza rhetorics on the day where he broke his slump, on the day where he came through and was the hero for Arkansas? But I will say, JT, in danger of being Jason Jones, that's only a thing because Arkansas didn't bring back Jason Jones. Like Jason Jones right now, let me pull up the numbers real quick. He's making a name for himself. He has become a very intriguing draft prospect, which we kind of all knew was possible and knew was a thing that could happen. So Jones through 9 games is hitting 286 with 2 home runs, 2 doubles, and a triple. Good for a 937 OPS at Oklahoma State. We'll see what he does the rest of the year, but like he's off to a pretty solid start. I think there's a very if Souza doesn't end up in the everyday lineup this year and he ends up transferring somewhere else, I definitely think he would end up being very good there. We'll see. He's ultimately got to hit. He's got to do what he did today. But I don't know if today is the day to be worried about that. I feel like maybe today was the turning point for him, but we shall see. Let's see. So JT's clarifying. He says, I love Souza, but he didn't hit here and transferred is what I mean. Yeah, no, okay. And I would say he's definitely in danger of that, but ultimately, and I've been saying it all along, I just don't think Arkansas should be closing the book on Nolan Souza. And of course, it's easier to say that after he came through, they hit today, but just what he did in the offseason and what he showed, he's just too talented, man. Like it's got to take a lot before you really give up on a talent of that caliber. And I think Souza is a better long-term prospect than pretty much every position player on this team, except for maybe Iredale and maybe Vahiva. But like him and Helfrich, I think Souza's a better long-term prospect than Helfrich. A lot of the outfielders are good for Arkansas, probably better college players right now, but like long-term prospect, I think Souza's got a higher upside than pretty much all those guys. I think I would maybe want to see what that ceiling could be before we close the book on it. And I think that would have probably been the case last year. I saw a lot of people saying that Jason Jones, they're like, oh, he got plenty of opportunities. He only started like 19 games last year. He wasn't even on the travel roster in SEC play. So I definitely am not super convinced that like Jason Jones got the fairest of shakes, especially considering how bad Arkansas's outfield was last year. Seeing the way he's swinging now, you were probably thinking like, damn, maybe we could have afforded to throw him a few more bones last year. But okay, chat finally starting to die down a little bit. We'll wrap up here in a second. I want to appreciate and thank you guys so much for popping in and joining me on this Sunday afternoon live chat. We're definitely going to do more of these, whether it's a watch along or just a Sunday recap of the weekend. I really enjoyed doing this. Again, appreciate you guys for being here. I see this from our guy Trey and Harrison. He says, what do you think of Charles Davalon so far? Charles Davalon has been pretty I would say he's been all these guys coming into the year, we all kind of have our expectations, and obviously Souza's been way below it. Pepe's been way below it. But Kahio Aloy has been way above it. And even Cam Kojal's been above it. And like it kind of usually is that way. It's rare that you have someone that is pretty much exactly what you expected. But I would say Charles Davalon's been about what I expected. I think he can hit for a little bit higher average. Let me pull up the numbers real quick, see where he's at now. So Charles Davalon, as of today, is hitting 268. He's drawn 6 walks, been hit by 1 pitch, has only struck out twice, which is a number that I really like. And that's a thing that I feel like this Arkansas lineup really needs, big picture. I mean, because there's a lot of these guys, like I said, that are kind of boom or bust. Charles Davalon with his only 2 strikeouts, and he's got let's see, what is it? 40. And that's in 41 at-bats. He's got 2 strikeouts. And that didn't even include all the walks. That's like about 50 plate appearances, 2 strikeouts. I think that's big time for Arkansas to have at the top of the lineup. That'll be big for Arkansas situationally. He's got just the 1 home run, but he had 10 home runs last year. I think there's some more pop in there. He can really pull a baseball. He actually had an opposite field home run on Friday. But I mean, when he runs into one, he can pull one. He's going to hit a few off that performance facility. He also had 13 stolen bases last year. And I don't believe he's 1 of 2 so far this year. So there's probably a little bit more he can give in that regard. But overall, he's just gritty. He's just a grinder. He's kind of a throwback because he's really not trying to hit for power at all. He just kind of is a like Ichiro-esque, just trying to slap the ball around the yard. And teams have been shifting over crazy on him lately. And I just think that's crazy because we saw it today. He just hit a ground ball down the third base line. I think he's going to have a ton of 2 and 3 hit days in SEC play if teams continue to shift on him. And I think he's a good tone setter for the lineup. And I think personality wise, he helps a lot. Hasn't been like tremendous or anything. I haven't been blown away by his first 3 weekends, but he's been about what I've expected. And I think there's a little bit more juice in the tank, and he will have better days as well. And so I think he's kind of right in the mix of this whole outfield discussion. And I think when SEC play rolls around, I maybe trust him more than I trust some guys that are hitting better than him right now, like a Justin Thomas or a Cam Kojal, or even Logan Maxwell. Logan Maxwell I'm pretty confident in, but like I think Davalon's as good or better than most of those guys. I think he's going to be good for the Razorbacks. Again, really appreciate you guys for tapping in today, man. I've said it before. I'm always worried when I do one of these live streams that just no one's going to pull up and hang out. So I appreciate you guys for making some time on this Sunday. A lot easier to talk about it whenever it's a sweep. And so I hope I answered most of your questions for the most part. And if not, that's why we do this show every single day. There is a Baumbastic podcast going out from now until probably July. Every single day, you will have some type of Baumbastic content in your life. And I look forward to bringing it here for you guys. And I appreciate you guys for supporting as always. And I appreciate your love for Arkansas baseball. And so have a great Sunday. And again, we'll see you guys tomorrow on Monday to talk about our winners of the week. It's been another brilliant edition of the Baumbastic Podcast. Thank you guys so much for being here. And I will see you Tuesday for Arkansas's next game, but tomorrow to talk about our winners of the weekend. I appreciate you guys for being on the Baumbastic Podcast. Subscribe, like this video, do everything you got to do. Tell your friends, tell your mama, tell your daddy, tell your auntie. The Baumbastic Podcast, best baseball show you've ever seen. Thank you guys.